This is Rock and Roll English. Real people, real English. Here's your host, Martin Johnston.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Rock and Roll English, episode number 315, baby. Oh yeah. And in today's episode we have a special guest, someone famous in the English teaching world, but the English teaching world is international, so she is also internationally famous. So I speak to Anna from English Like a Native. Have you heard of her? Probably yes. Now, I wanted to get her on the podcast for a very long time, and there's a very R&R story, let's say, about me trying to get her on the podcast that you will hear at the very beginning of the podcast. So I am very happy to finally have her here, and we speak about something which maybe is not so well known outside of the UK, which is the North-South divide in England, because there is a North-South divide, because there are many differences between the North and the South of England. So it's one of those rock and roll English episodes where you may actually learn something and not just talking about pooing. So quickly before we start, I am doing another YouTube live this Thursday. So Thursday the 26th of October at 8 p.m. UK time, 9 p.m. in Europe. But if you can't make it live, don't worry, you can obviously watch it later. And we will analyse the language from the podcast, break things down, and especially connected speech. This is something which everyone really enjoyed in the last live, so make sure you don't miss it. And of course, if you have difficulty understanding anything from this episode, or at work, or films, or wherever, don't forget to check out my online course, Jungle Listening, which is the only course on the market which breaks down fast-spoken jungle English and transforms it into something simple and learnable. So click the link in the podcast you are listening to right now to check it out, or below in this YouTube video, because yes, I forgot to mention this podcast is on YouTube too. So if you're listening to the podcast version, go to YouTube if you want to see my face and Anna's face. Maybe you probably don't want to see my face so much, and I understand that, but maybe Anna's. So go to YouTube and check it out. Anyway, that is enough of me talking. Here is the episode. Happy listening. Hello, Anna, and welcome to Rock and Roll English.
Hello, thank you for having me.
It is an absolute pleasure to have you, and I couldn't not mention this, okay? I'm sorry, Anna, I have to mention this. I sent Anna a message in 2017. I said, hi, Anna, I like your stuff, blah, blah, blah. Would you like to come on the podcast? And I didn't get a response, but I thought that was normal because you were and are, like, you've got a much bigger following, I'm sure. That went to your spam thing. And then out of the blue a few months ago, 6 years later, I got a response. Yeah, hi, Martin, that would be great. So it was unbelievable. We must have set some kind of record there, Anna.
Yeah, I'm quite well known for delayed responses, but that has to be an absolute record. I think, I don't know how Instagram works in terms of how it sorts your messages, but I do get overwhelmed with messages, so I just don't see all of them. And then it seems to have this kind of like highlighted section now when you first go into your DMs, where it kind of pulls up any messages you haven't looked at. And so I've obviously gone through a number of messages recently and just brought yours back up to the top. And I didn't even recognize the fact that it was from 6 years previous.
Yeah, I actually had to highlight that to you because I thought, has she not seen that? Because it does have the date on it, and it said like, I don't know, September 2017. Because I had to double check, and I thought, did I contact her again recently? And so I looked at the message, like, no, that was from 2017, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, very embarrassing. It's good that you've got a good sense of humour. And I was like, oh my goodness me, how did I miss that? But I'm glad that, we finally made it work.
Exactly, yeah. Good things come to those who wait. So Yeah, I am delighted to have you here on the podcast. So thanks very much. So I'm sure actually most people know you. So just a quick intro about you. So tell us who you are, what you do. Like I said, I'm sure most people have heard of you already, but for those that haven't.
Yeah. Yes, I'm Anna. I'm Anna from English Like a Native. I'm on most social platforms, primarily on podcast now, in the English Like a Native podcast and YouTube. As the name will suggest to most of you, I'm a native English speaker and I teach native English, as in full of grammatical errors, because we often speak with grammatical errors. I cover a lot of dialect and accent. With many accent tutorials, because we have a variety of accents in this country, and a lot of idiomatic English. And I just try and make learning fun and ordinary. So it's not like textbook English or ordinary classroom English. It's just chit chats, really, just how kids learn. You just listen to it and hopefully it'll sink in.
Exactly. And that's exactly what we do here on Rock and Roll English. So you are the perfect guest to have. So you actually mentioned there about lots of like different accents and things in the UK. So correct me if I'm wrong here. You were born in the north, but you now live in the south of England. That's correct, yeah?
Yes. I've moved over to the dark side, as some northerners would say. I was born in a small town called Southport, which is, I think, technically Merseyside, so it's near to Liverpool, and I was brought up mostly around Manchester, and then when I was in my 20s, I moved down to London for studying, and haven't really left. I've kind of moved away from the city a little bit, but stayed in the south. I can't really imagine going back up north these days. Right,
interesting. Now, lots of people, I'm not sure how well this is known in other countries. So talking about specifically England, there is a north-south divide, no? So the main thing, the reason I say there is, I actually remember I did this in school for an economics project about the north-south divide, because like economically, a house, I'm sure you will know this, probably where you grew up, like near Manchester, would cost a lot less than it costs probably where you live now, no?
Yeah, absolutely. Generally, the further south you go in this country, the more expensive everything is. So it's always a pleasure when we go on holiday, like we have a staycation in the UK, and we go maybe to Wales, or we go up north to the Lake District or somewhere. It's always a pleasure traveling up north, because the petrol becomes cheaper, the food becomes cheaper, everything is just cheaper. But housing, particularly around the capital, is insane. I used to dream about the day I could buy my own house, because we have a thing in this country about owning our own house, which is a bit crazy. And I used to think when I was 21, by the time I'm 30, I'll own a house. Not even near. I'm 41 now. I'm nowhere near owning my own house. I don't think I ever will be able to, because I'm just priced out.
That was exactly the same as me. This is why I still ask myself whether it was a good idea to move back to the UK. I had a lovely life in Italy, sea view, lovely apartment, my own apartment, moved back to the UK, and it's a dream to...
Why did you move back?
Let's not get into that. We could have a whole podcast about that.
Because I'm desperate to move to Italy. Like, that's my dream, is to go and live over there.
So many people say that same thing to me, and that's, again, why I ask myself, what am I doing? So, there clearly is a north-south divide. In fact, as my teacher told me in school, because I wanted to do my project on, is there a north-south divide? And he said to me, that's a ridiculous title, because I can tell you now there is, because of like prices. And I also found something very strange at school when I was doing this. This was in economics. One of the things that we measure this by, so like house prices, but another one is the cost of beer, which I think is a reflection of our country.
Our culture.
Exactly. That one of the measurements we have of how much things cost is a pint of beer, which down south now is like £5.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. When I'm pricing my products or my services, I'm always like, oh, is it too expensive to ask someone to spend a $5? And I'm like, you wouldn't even get a drink or a sandwich for that price.
Exactly.
Like, actually, it's not that much. I mean, it's relative to everyone's situation, but yeah, down here it's expensive to eat out or get a beer or whatever.
Absolutely. Everything. Breathing is expensive.
Yeah.
So I thought you would be a great person to talk about some other aspects of this because, as I said, we're not going to go into our houses more expensive in the north because they clearly are. So we're going to look at some other like stereotypes, let's say, because not only like economic differences, there are differences in like the way people are and the way northerners look at southerners and the way southerners look at northerners. So we're going to look at a few of these and have a chat about, from our experience, whether they are true or not. Obviously, don't take this as gospel.
Hoping not to offend anyone.
Yeah, of course.
No offense meant.
Just from our experience, okay? So the first one is northerners are real men. What do you find? Have you found this to be true? Now, real men, obviously, we're going by the like stereotypical real man, big, strong, can drink lots of beer, knows how to, like, if you buy something, knows how to put it together like a cupboard or something like that. What's your experience of this?
So there's lots of images flicking through my mind now of all the men that I know who are not kind of southern or kind of scattered around the north of England and the ones that I know from London. And, I think no stereotype is the overall rule. There are lots of exceptions.
Of course.
But I think the reason the stereotype exists is because there's, in the past particularly, there was a lot more industry, a physical industry in the north. The mining, for example. Yeah. These men were doing very physical work, mining all the coal and stuff like that. And whereas if you came to London, you were coming to do academic study and things around finance. It's the financial hub. It's the capital. So people here sit in offices mostly. You don't come to London to work in a mine. You come to London to sit in an office in a suit and not do much. So I think that's possibly where the stereotype has come from.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think that is. Yeah.
And I my partner works in finance, and he's not like your big muscular type of guy, but he can make a shelf. In fact, he's made like window seats. He's very handy with a saw.
Okay.
Yeah. If there's anything that needs doing in the house, if there's a leak or, electronics or whatever, I'm like, Nick, can you have a look at that? Because I'm sure you'll figure it out. And so I think he's a proper man. He's a real man. But then I've had previous boyfriends from the south who wouldn't know what to do with a hammer. And
that I would be in that category of people when there is something to do. Luckily, my dad's really good and my wife's dad is really good at these things. So generally call them, like hold the hammer for them, an important job, which is sometimes overlooked.
Yeah. You're the tool belt.
Oh yeah.
That's what you are.
Exactly. Exactly.
So you're a southerner, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So I grew up and live in Essex. So and maybe it's just because you kind of attract people similar to you, but my group of friends, we are all definitely, we would not pass a test to be a real man. Absolutely
right,
not.
Okay.
So
you're all Essex lads, but not very good with a hammer.
Definitely not. So in fact, like from my experience, I remember being like on holiday and like making friends with some northerners, and we would always have this like north-south banter, etc. And our impression of them was always like, whoa, they are real men.
Oh, really? Were they better drinkers than you?
Oh my God, 100%. So much so, once I was in Germany with a friend, and we got to the point, because in Germany we're drinking, I can't remember what they're called, like the really big beers.
A tankard or something.
So tankards, yeah. So we got to the point where we were actually having difficulty even lifting them, let alone drinking them, because we, after a few of them, yeah, let's say we were feeling a bit dizzy. So yeah, they were drinking us under the table. They were bigger and stronger. Luckily, we'd made friends with them, so it wasn't. We didn't have any problems. But yeah, our impression of them was very much like, whoa, now that's a man. That's a man. We were impressed by them. And another time we went to Blackpool, which apologies from anyone from Blackpool, but I must admit I think was the worst place I've ever been to in my whole life. Everyone there was on a stag do or hen do except us.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's what it's famous for.
Yeah.
It's the big place to have your stag do or your hen do.
And I remember we on the Saturday thought, right, let's do something in the day. So we were as well like 25, something like this. So we decided to go swimming in the local leisure centre.
Right. Right. Not in the sea. I was going to say.
No.
Swimming in Blackpool Sea.
The local leisure centre, walking down and seeing everyone like already on the beers, drinking, and just thinking like, this is too much for us. These Northerners. So in my opinion, that stereotype is true. So going to the next one, difference in weather, because I can see you nodding there. It's true, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, one of my friends, she moved out of the city, London city, to move up to Cambridge, where she was originally from. So her family's there. She moved back to Cambridge. I was like, that's fine. I understand that. And then she said to me recently, actually, I'm thinking of moving up to Yorkshire. And I was like, and she said the reason was because she was feeling quite depressed where she was. And I was like, but do you realise in Yorkshire, it's going to rain so much more. And if you're feeling depressed now, just stick yourself alone in a place where you don't know anyone with loads more rain. You're going to feel even worse. But it's the temperature as well. The temperature is always, a good 5 degrees difference between true north. When you're getting up like north of Manchester, you're going to get about 5 degrees difference between the temperature in London and the temperature up there. So whenever I'm doing a staycation, no matter how hot it feels where I am in London, I always pack like a number of layers for going up north, because even though it says it's summertime, lots of sunshine, like, no, I'm not going to be deceived. It's going to be cold. It's going to be windy, and there's probably going to be some rain.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, because that again was my experience of going to the north. But I found it strange that like when I've been on stag do's and things, the cities in the north, like with my friends, like there's always a few jokes about the weather, as if we come from like Barbados, where it's like 30 degrees and sunshine every day, which is clearly not.
Yeah, but London's in a bit of a dip, I think.
Right.
Like geography, if my geography serves me, we're in a bit of a dip. So there's not much like wind. We're kind of sheltered, and so I think it kind of warms up a bit more here than anywhere else because of that. We're not as exposed.
Right, interesting.
Perhaps. But the whole country is known as like the green pastures. And we're so green in this country because of all the rain. So we've got to be thankful for that. Otherwise we'd be a completely different country, I think, without all the grass and the sheep.
Be thankful for the rain, because again, having lived in Sicily, it is sometimes tough, because like before, the weather never bothered me in the slightest. But having lived in a sunny country where sometimes like you get really sunny days in even December and January, and I would go to the beach, not necessarily get in the water, but have a nice walk and be in like a t-shirt. Obviously not all the time, but once you have had that for so long. So then when I come here and hear my friends like talking about how bad the weather is in the north, I sometimes think, it's not great here though, is it?
It's certainly unpredictable.
Yeah.
And that's the only problem with deciding to have a staycation here, is that you, even no matter, especially this year, we haven't had a summer this year, you just can't rely on the weather to be nice.
That's exactly why I don't really know the UK so well, because I always thought if I'm going on holiday, like I want a bit of sunshine. So, and it's equally as expensive to go somewhere in the UK like as it is to go abroad. So generally my experience would always be go abroad. So I don't actually know much of my own country at all. But for example, Italy, I've seen almost all of it, like all of the big cities. But in England especially, hardly anything at all. Okay, so here's another one. Again, really common stereotype. This is it true, Northerners are more friendly? What do you think?
I agree with that.
Yeah.
As a general blanket rule, particularly compared to London.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
So, down here we have a much more kind of, is cosmopolitan the right word? We have a mix of cultures.
Yeah.
People coming to the UK tend to think, I'm going to go to London. I need to be in the south, mostly. And so we have, if you go into London, you rarely actually hear the true Cockney accent.
Of course.
You hear accents from all, like international accents, and people from all over the UK as well, down in London. And so, what was your question again? I've just done that money brain thing. I've completely lost my thread.
That Northerners
friendly.
are more, friendly.
Yeah. And so I think there is a little bit of like loss of that community because it's a big city and people come in and out very quickly. I lived in London and moved around London a lot. So I was in one place for 6 months and I'd move again. And so there's not really a strong community sense within London or even the surrounding areas, because people, if they are there and they're staying there for a long time, they're just trying really hard to stay in the rat race. It's so expensive. So people just kind of keep themselves to themselves. And I've noticed living where I live on the suburbs, on the outskirts of London, I try so hard to make friends here. And it's like pulling teeth. It's like trying to get blood out of a stone. It's so difficult to make friends. And we have children to use as assets for friend making, and it's still so difficult. Whereas up north, the further north you go, especially when you go out to the smaller towns and villages, there's very much a community sense. And not just the north, I'd say over in, never eat shredded wheat, over in the the southwest, Cornwall, those kind of areas where you still have those villages, there is a community sense there. So people tend to be more friendly when they feel more established. They know the people in their environment. So when a stranger walks in, they smile and they go, "Morning, all right, you're right." Here, to look someone in the eye, it's like you just don't do it. You're on the bus, you're on the tube, you don't look at people. If someone looks at you, you think they're strange. Like, what do you want? He's going to mug me, So I think it's true.
No, I actually totally agree with you. From my experience, again, even on that holiday, for example, these northern lads, when we were staying in a hostel, they were very friendly towards us. Like, we would never have initiated a conversation with someone else. Like, oh my God, we don't know this person. So yeah, I totally agree with basically everything you said. And it can be really difficult to make friends here, but I can't not mention the fact that you said never eat shredded wheat to remember your north, east, south, west. That's what we do in the UK, how to remember it. But I hadn't heard that in such a long time. As soon as you said that, I thought, wow, that is amazing.
Because I'm dyslexic. I'm dyslexic with directions and with colours, and some numbers I switch around, but I always forget my left from my right. And my direction. So I have to do that. I move in a clockwise direction, and that works. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, again, I have to agree with that. But like you said, especially in London, and I'm the same. When I go into London, I immediately just become really. I was in London at the weekend, and I was going up the escalator, and someone was on the left, just standing there when they shouldn't have been. Because obviously you stand on the right, don't you? But if you want to walk quickly, go on the left. And someone was just there, and I was fuming. I had steam coming out of my ears. And then I noticed she even had a pram with a child in there. So I thought, I can't tell her to move. But I was still thinking, what are you doing? Just immediately, I just become one of those horrible people as soon as I'm in London. So
first world problems, eh?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we agree on that one. Okay, so we are going to stop the episode there for today and continue this tomorrow in the Rock and Roll English family membership area. So if you would like to continue listening to the conversation where we talk about accents and lots of other things, and Anna tells us a real R&R story that involves a misunderstanding and a man taking off his underwear. So if you would like to listen to the rest of the episode, go to rockandrollenglish.com, click become a member and follow the instructions. Remember, by becoming a member, you will also get access to more than 1,000, yes, 1,000 extra episodes of Rock and Roll English, weekly online lessons with me. You will build a close personal relationship with me and with lots of people around the world, and a million other benefits. So yes, remember, rockandrollenglish.com, click become a member. So for a quick recap of the vocabulary, because we will look at some of this in more detail on Thursday at the Facebook Live, remember 8 p.m. UK time, and we will also look at the connected speech features, but just a quick recap. So Anna said at the beginning of the podcast that she gets overwhelmed with messages. So when you're overwhelmed with something, with messages, it's like you don't know what to do. It's almost confusing. Oh, there are so many messages, and probably that's why you end up responding 6 years later to a message. So I then said, good things come to those who wait. Very simple to understand. I'm just remembering. I'm just reminding you of this so that you can use it too. Anna also mentioned that when she has a staycation, a lovely word there. I think that's quite a new word, actually, which means you go on holiday, but you stay in your own country. And she also mentioned about buying her own house, that she is priced out of the market. So the costs of houses are so high in the UK that she can't afford it, like me. Us English teachers, unfortunately, don't earn so much money. So she is priced out and I am priced out. So I then mentioned not to take everything we say on this podcast as gospel, okay? This is just two people having a chat. We are not experts or anything like that. And Anna then said that her partner knows how to put a cupboard together. A lovely term there. So when you buy something, you usually have to put it together, something that I am not very good at. Anna also mentioned that when she thinks of men that she knows scattered around the north of England, so scattered like one in Newcastle, one in Liverpool, one in Manchester, one in Leeds. This is scattered a bit here and there, let's say. Then she mentioned her partner is very handy with a saw. So the saw is the thing that you use to cut wood. And if you are handy, it means you're very good at that thing. So I am definitely not handy with a saw. I did mention, though, holding a hammer is an overlooked job. So people don't really value it for what they should. We also had a tankard of beer. So a tankard is that big glass, that really big one, which does even get difficult to hold after you've had a few of them. And then I mentioned that I was having difficulty holding it, let alone drinking it. A lovely term there, let alone. And I also mentioned these northern lads, northern men, were drinking us under the table. A very British expression to say someone can drink more than you. You drink them under the table. I mentioned I went to Blackpool and everyone was on a stag do or hen do, which, remember, is the party you have before you get married. And there was the local leisure centre. Now, if you go to a leisure centre, normally you can go swimming, maybe you can play badminton, maybe you can go ice skating. Normally has all of these different things that you can do. And I said when we came out of the leisure centre, it was like 3-4 p.m. and we saw everyone already on the beers. Notice that as well, on the beers. And then Anna said when she has a staycation, she will not be deceived. So she will not be tricked, and she always packs lots of layers. So if I am wearing a t-shirt, a jumper and a jacket, that would be 3 layers. She also mentioned London is in a dip. So think of a dip when you dip your biscuit into some tea, of that like going down. London is in a dip. If you are watching the YouTube video, I am making a perfect hand movement of a dip. So go and watch the YouTube video. And I mentioned before I moved to Italy, the weather in the UK never bothered me in the slightest. A lovely term there as well. It didn't bother me at all. It didn't bother me in the slightest. And I mentioned as well that everyone down south is just trying to keep themselves in the rat race. This is a term we use in the UK. I think also in America, the rat race of just going to work 9 to 5 to try and pay the mortgage on your house. This is known as the rat race. So she mentioned it's difficult to make friends. So trying to speak to people, get a conversation is like trying to get blood from a stone. Something very difficult if you've ever tried to do that. And obviously the same as talking to people from down south like me. I even have difficulty saying down south. I still say down south with a f sound. I have to really think about that to not do that. Anyway, so that's all of the vocabulary. If you are listening to the podcast version, remember to check out either the YouTube version or go to rockandrollenglish.com. Click podcast episodes and all of the vocabulary will be there, as well as lots of links to find Anna in case you don't know where to find her, and a free pronunciation masterclass that she is offering directly to you. Don't forget YouTube Live this Thursday, 20-something of October at 8 p.m. UK time. I will see you all very soon, people. Thank you very much for listening. But in the meantime, just keep on rocking, baby.
Thanks so much for listening to Rock and Roll English. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit rockandrollenglish.com and facebook.com/rockandrollenglish. We'll catch you next time.